We'll reconvene. We are now on item 7.3. This is the public transport bus renewal or bus contract renewal. Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, councillors. I'll open with some statements, and then my team who have undertaken the technical work are here to answer any questions. So over the last several years, council and several external committees as well as others have been directly involved in the development of the package in front of you today. Just summarise that for your benefit. So in effect, we are delivering aspects or a step forward in terms of the aspirations, the vision and the objectives of the 2022 Regional Public Transport Plan, which was adopted in September 2022, and then picked up through the long-term plan process from August, September 2023, and included in the workshops with you all in November and December 23, and is included in the report that was presented to you in January 24 ahead of the preparation of the consultation document. Several of the projects within the package here were included within the Regional Land Transport Plan, which was adopted in mid-2024. But then we did provide updates to the Future Proof PT Subcommittee in February 24, the Regional Transport Committee in April 24. The PT Pathways report was presented to the PT Subcommittee in November 24. There was a council workshop on zero emission buses in November 24. The Future Proof Implementation Committee received a report on the North Waikato area in December 2024. There was a workshop of the PT subcommittee looking at bus networks, all of the networks that you'll talk about today, at a workshop on the 5th of May 2025. There was a report to the Future Proof PT subcommittee in May 24 and to Regional Transport Committee in May 25 and the RTC in May 25. Council had a workshop looking at zero emission buses and assets in June 25. There was a series of network and service workshops with Hamilton City Council and Waikato District Council in May 25. A report to Regional Transport Committee in June 25. We undertook public consultation in June and July 25 with 1,218 responses. And then at the recent Future Proof PT Subcommittee in August 25, we provided an update on what was coming to you today. So the minutes and the discussions of all of those are available. What we're presenting to you today is an integrated report that pulls together all of the channels of technical work and community engagement that's been underway into a single report with a single set of recommendations that frame up where we're at now and what we need to do next. So Dave, could I ask you to bring up the first of the timeline slides? So this is where we're at today, and the second red box in the centre timeline is what we are presenting to you today. And you can see the component parts of the journey that we have been on. The second slide, I won't ask you to switch to it quite yet, but talks about what we need to do from today's decision. The report in front of you states that deferring a decision on this topic would have significant impacts. It's taken work since late 2022 and all of the way through this triennium to get to the place where this report is in front of you. If a decision isn't made in this triennium about this step of the process, it will take a significant amount of time for the next triennium to pick this topic back up, and that will have significant impacts on the timeline that we are working to as a result of 6 months of negotiation with NZTA to extend bus contracts to October 27 and mid-2028 for the commencement of new contracts. In addition, not being able to commence those new contracts in 27 and 28, as stated in the report, jeopardises the region's ability to maintain service continuity and quality, and potentially impacting public confidence and operational performance. I should also note that achievement of a CEO KPI is at risk unless a decision is made this triennium, and that maps out the things that are required by June 2026. So we can get into some detail in a moment, but what's in front of you today in summary is a publicly consulted and supported network change that can achieve significant progress with delivery of the vision in the Regional Public Transport Plan and wider aspirations. Critically, we believe with a day one launch within the existing budget, subject to tender. The report, in summary, having undertaken comprehensive technical work and aligned with the feedback from yourselves in terms of previous workshops, does not recommend that we require the full bus fleet to be electric on day one of those new contracts, but rather allows the market to make steps to deliver the government mandate over the period of time within that 9-year contract term, which is the standard term that we operate for public contracts. We are in the middle of a 9-year or towards the end of a 9-year term at present.
Sorry, can you just say that one more time? I just want to make sure I didn't miss it.
So we are indicating as a result of the work that the most efficient way to transition to zero emission vehicles is to allow the operator to make that transition at time they would control at lowest cost to us, so that they achieve the government mandates by the dates that are set in the National Emissions Reduction Plan. And that would be at some point through the 9 or so year term of the new contract.
I think it's a really important point you're just making. I just want to make sure all councillors understand the impact of it. So you're not proposing any significant rating impact through this at the start, but it might change over time.
The contract that we are proposing, and we can talk about that in more detail, includes the potential for a number of step points that could be achieved either through available budget or population change or government policy direction that would allow us to do more as budget decisions permit, but we're not asking for that on day one.
Oh, sorry, can I get Jen and Angela? I've got a question order. Yep.
Are you going to cover that in more detail?
We
I can wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I can just get to the end of the opening statement, then we'll go through the pieces of this, if
Can I
that's
get you
okay.
to just pull that mic just a little bit closer? There you go. Thank you.
Then in terms of having assessed the options for depots and charging facilities and the things that we talked about at our last workshop with yourselves in June, our technical work now recommends that we do not take the step change ourselves to invest in depots on day one. And we have undertaken some external financial modelling of the costs of the outcomes of that technical work that talk about the difference in terms of an interest cost of us investing versus the change to an operational cost of the operator investing, and that's included in your report. However, the report recommends that as a minimum, we continue to consider options that reduce future risk for the organisation and for the region. And that could be via negotiation of an asset transfer clause at the end of the next batch of contracts, or further technical work, which we would look to deliver through the next long-term plan that would think about what the options are as a result of the contracts that will be in place at that point. But we're not asking for that decision to be made today. So if, Dave, we go to the next slide. From this point, we work through the remainder of 2025 to pull together the actions that arise from your decisions today and seek approval from NZTA of our approach by the end of the year or by January 2026. And alongside that, continue to work on procurement documents and undertake early market engagement. Our plan is to approach the market in early 2026 or January, February, and then start to engage directly with the market. And that will give us a sense of the tendered price for the services that are within the work that's in front of you today. That will come back through council several times, and in addition, has to come back to council for a decision ahead of that contract being approved and the NZTA funding being approved. So that is the point that you make a funding decision. And as I say, as a result of the technical work, the proposals are within budget on day one. From that point, we're into establishment, and then there is then a period of time through 2026 and 2027 for the regional contracts to be established, and then an additional amount of time for the Hamilton contracts to be established that then go live. So November 27 and July 28. So this is a process that began in 2021, 2022, and will conclude with the final contract going live in mid-2028. And that's a sign of the points that we're on that journey as we go through. So my proposal, Madam Chair, is that we go through each of those component parts and allow council to ask questions on each, and the experts here will respond. And then I guess I'll look to you to work out how you want to pull this together and move to the decisions.
Happy with that approach?
So maybe the first one then on the next slide is the networks that are proposed. And I don't have slides for all of these, but I just thought it was valuable to show you the networks that are proposed here. And then Catherine can answer any questions on those and on the consultation that's been undertaken.
And remind us, these network proposals, you've taken these through what processes of engagement and with whom?
Good morning, councillors, and through the chair. So we developed short, medium and long-term public transport networks for all areas in which we are needing to go out to tender for. Hamilton just had a short-term and long-term, everywhere else had short, medium and long. We went out for consultation in June, the 25th of June, I believe, until the 13th of July, via our normal consultation process managed through our council communications team. So this was an online only survey which detailed the proposed plans, included maps. We did provide hard copies of the surveys if they were requested, which we had a few instances of that, which worked quite well. So it was open to the entire region, and yes, collated information through that.
Perhaps should add that there were also engagements with district councils ahead of that process, and we got to the point of letters of support from many of the councils as well. So that what was proposed had already included a lot of their feedback.
Just a question on that.
Yes, go ahead.
When you went out and consulted with people about what they would like, did you ask them how much they're willing to pay for it?
So for the short-term options for every network that we are putting together, it is within existing budgets. So it does not require any increase in cost, subject to tender, of course. So we really tried to be careful with what we were proposing to do in the short term for 2027 and 2028. It's really an optimization and an efficiency exercise with what more can we do with the same budgets. The medium term and long term service enhancements and improvements are based on additional funding, which will be determined over the next 9 years. So we'll only be able to do if funding is received from Whakamutunga.
So the electrification wouldn't occur till 2028 and beyond. Is that what you're saying? It's the medium term, not the short term.
Well, yeah, so I just do want to make a differentiation here a little bit, is that the bus networks on the ground are the networks in terms of whether they run by diesel vehicles or electric vehicles, or when the EV vehicles come in, doesn't change what the bus network will be on the ground, will not affect what we're able to deliver in the short, medium and long term. I think the electrification is just how the fleet progresses over time towards an electrification component.
But there are costs for electrification which will be borne by someone and presumably will impact on fares.
We'll get to the vehicles in a moment, if that's okay, Ben.
Okay.
Councillor Cookson, Councillor Hughes, and Councillor Strange. So this is, let's keep our questions in relation to the networks at this point, because we are going to step through the various aspects. Councillor Cookson.
Chris.
No, you're good.
Yeah, thank you. No. Spoke to Mayor Toby this morning and he's totally supportive of the Karakia model you've got here. His big issue was that he doesn't want electric buses. He definitely wants diesel buses to be running that service. That was what came out of that discussion this morning. Matamata Piako, I've got some issues with that because as what I understand is Matamata want to have a service with Cambridge. They don't want to have a circular route like you've got there because it would take Matamata people considerable amount of time to get back Matamata if the service is leaving from Cambridge back to Hamilton. So I don't know what that's going to provide. It's actually going to provide a service that no one wants because the service they want in Matamata only want to be serviced to Cambridge, not to Hamilton or anyone else. So I'm really struggling with why that model's like that in the long-term model. And if you go back to Matamata Piako, I've already got complaints all the time in my area that we've got frequency of buses with no people. But in the long term there, you just about want to double the services going to Morrinsville and that, which we've already got complaints. There's not enough people running on the buses. So I've got real issues with that as well, that in the future, you're wanting to provide and Morrinsville hasn't hit 10,000 people yet. It's still sitting around 7. You're taking if Karakia go on its own, then it's limiting the service that that Karakia people aren't coming through to Morrinsville and then connecting to Hamilton. So, yeah, I've just got real issues with all that, thanks you. And actually wanting to provide extra services out of Tiara going further out as well. Struggling with that because it needs to be in a place in Tiara that people can just catch a bus, and if they want to drive their car to that point, why would you want to drive a car and leave it out by the golf course or somewhere in Tiara to catch a bus to Hamilton? So I can't say that's quite ridiculous as far as I can see as well. So I don't know if that's enough points, but thank you.
Would you like to respond at all in terms of what engagement led to these sorts of proposals?
Sure, through the chair. So with Matamata Piako district, the connection to Cambridge, between Matamata and Cambridge via Hamilton, that has been there's been a lot of interest for that service, both from elected members and the public. So we did want to engage and test responses on that from the public. There was quite a bit of interest in keeping that in there. It is part of the long-term plan just because it does require quite a bit of extra additional cost in order to reroute the service via Cambridge, but that is something that we do see would be quite important, I think, to the community and to Cambridge as well.
Yeah, but it's a service that what they want from Matamata to Cambridge and back to Matamata. It's not a service they want going around the loop. That's what I was trying to explain then. That will not be a service that will be used if it is connected to the rest of the network.
I acknowledge that. But I do also just want to note that for any medium-term and long-term network plan that we have, particularly if for a new service or a new area, we will need to do detailed consultation with the communities at that time. We don't want to do too much detailed consultation on future plans at this point when there's so much uncertainty, and it could be 6 to 9 years before we have fundings to even do it. So that is something that will be ironed out in more details and tested with the communities and elected members at the time, should funding be available in order for us to even do that.
Short-term, long-term planning, it should actually have a dates of when that's going to happen as well.
we will, with all the networks, for all the service enhancements, as we do every NLTP period, we apply for funding to do service enhancements. Every NLTP.
This is back to your business plan. You should have some dates when these.
Mics, please. All right, so just so I'm clear, because you do have a date with the short term. The short term assumption on all of these networks is that it's within the financial envelope that we already have.
Correct.
The medium and long term are based on engagement you've had with the public, district councils, et cetera, and are reflective of what you feel you've heard. But the funding associated with those medium and long-term plans would come back to a future council for endorsement at a future time. Have I got that right?
So yes, that is correct. There are three funders for public transport. One is the council, another is the customer, and the third is the NZTA. Any change that requires additional funding, either from this council or NZTA, come back through a process like the long-term plan, and that's where we would, subject to the government policy statement of the day, would be able to apply for further funding from the Crown to support any change that gets made here. The point just on fares, and there's been a question around private share through the process. The day one timetable, with no extra cost, has no impact on private share. And aspirationally, we would want to see a lot more passengers as a result of the network changes that we make. That would reduce the private, that would increase the private share contribution to total cost without any further changes to fare numbers themselves. There's a reference to that in the report. So, but yes, so day one is what we're focused on based on what's achievable within the existing envelopes multiple, and then growth over that time has now been technically assessed and publicly consulted and would be delivered as funding becomes available.
And as approval is sought and received from both NZTA as well as this council or future WRC councils.
Correct.
Right? Okay. I've got Councillor Hughes, Councillor Strange, and then Councillor Smith. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who to direct the question to, but I want confirmation, please, that the budget figures that have been consulted on include all the new standards set by the government for fare recovery, and that the actual fare resulting from that is what we've consulted the constituents on.
Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Strange.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the team for all the work that you have done over the many, many years to get us to this point. So thank you for that. Madam Chair, I'd like to move this motion just to get it on the table. Question for the team. Fundamentally, you know, we need PT that is frequent, reliable, and that people will use. We also need it to be boundaryless as well. So moving to a regional PT rate enables a lot of that boundaryless planning to occur. And we need that local voice as well. So I'm confident that we have consulted, as Phil has outlined, over the years with the community, with committees, with our TA partners as well as having council workshops as needed. It gives me confidence as well that this has also gone through regional transport committee processes as well for the wider region. Just focusing on Hamilton for a moment with the network reviews, based on feedback, it's around 60% were happy to walk a little bit further to get to a more frequent route. Alongside that, I also had conversations with members in our community about size of buses, the ability to take bikes on Hamilton buses, and other mobility devices. At what point of the process will the future council or committees be able to feed into bus sizes, bus makeup, bikes on buses within Hamilton as well?
So yeah, I guess it's, sorry, Chair. As part of the tendering, yes, we will be looking at bus vehicle requirement, and usually that's informed by the national standards. So there's actually the national requirement for urban buses standards, and I guess the provision of bike racks is also part of the RUB. So that will be issued in the document as the requirement. But so at this stage, I think the staff will not be seeking any feedback on the RUB standards. But yeah, I'm happy to take in the councillors any additional requirements that we need to include in our applications.
Yeah, I guess feedback from the community that I've heard is having more space, maybe less seats for mobility devices actually on the buses, especially in Hamilton. You don't want to be stopping for too long, getting bikes off bike racks. You want that roll on, roll off if possible. But yeah, happy to take that up at the appropriate time.
Happy to answer further questions on networks, and then the next slide is just a summary of each of the other topics, if there are questions on those as well. In your hands, Madam Chair.
Sorry. I'm just going to test the room. What do we want to do here? Do we want to work through each of these sequentially and ask the questions along the way, or do you want to hear all the presentations?
We have an indication how long all the presentations is it? Is it 50 slides or is it?
There is one slide with the titles of the other channels of work on there. There is no further information in the PowerPoint. So it was really about going through questions that you had on each of the other work streams, really. So
Happy to wait my questions till the end.
Okay. Just before we move off of the network, so we'll go through that, but I just want to check, are there any other questions regarding the networks that have been?
Probably. Yes.
Probably.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Councillor Smith and then
thank you.
Councillor Marr.
report in its totality has probably left me with more questions than answers. Tried to establish some of the costing issues that I have with Janine, and she tells me this wonderful group to my left is going to answer them all. So I'm prepared to wait for that. But one of the problems I've got is that I suppose I'm looking at public transport a bit like benefits. You've got to provide some members of our community with a standard of living through an unemployment benefit or a sickness benefit so that they have the ability to meet their basic needs. And I put public transport in basic needs for our community for those who are not able to, it's impractical for them to have private transport. So looking at it in that way, I haven't seen the detail about the shape of the buses, and maybe it's detail that it's not yet ready to be looked at. And so I'll make that statement at this stage and wait till the end to come back to what hopefully we will hear. But I'm just, yeah, there's a lot of questions, and I think I'll wait till the end.
Again, was there a question about the network? Yeah. Microphone.
It's the makeup of the buses. You know, like seeing all these big 48-seater buses running around town at the peak periods is great. They're all full. The rest of the day, they're basically empty.
So
it's
the network
that's the
question?
network. You know, how are we going to service the network in a practical way? So the routes, not an
Okay,
issue.
that's what, the roots is what
Yeah, but it's
I
how the
was.
routes are serviced that I'm concerned
Okay.
about at the moment, one of the issues.
Got it.
So will
Councillor
that be
Marr.
covered shortly or?
Well, like I said, I wanted to get the networks, and how I interpreted networks was the routes that are being proposed in here.
But
So,
I asked the question is, are you going to cover the type of buses, vehicles that will be used on that network?
As
Thank you.
again, as I've said, there is one other slide on this presentation pack that lists this work stream headings. We will answer any questions you have on each of those work stream headings.
great. Network questions.
Network
Route,
questions.
sorry,
Right, got it.
route questions.
Right. Yeah, no, I just, a little bit to Robbie's, concern around the input on the routes, which I sort of raised. I had a Great Barrier group say to me, we weren't consulted, so there's probably some criticism around the district council in that, because to me, that would be part of their network actually, requesting what they would do. But could I just get clarity? So, you know, the affordability of the bus service, there's apparently cost estimates there that we haven't seen any of, and it's not in this pack. But the high level and that depot land and staff vehicle facility, does that relate to the short term, the medium, or the long term? Those figures you've got there, 24 million for depot land. Now, is that the short term piece, or is that the medium term piece, or is that the long term piece that you've got here? What does 24 million relate to?
So that's not a network question.
Well, it is, but well, okay.
Yeah.
If you're going to cover it later on.
No, routes. So, sorry, yep, valid questions, but I just want to, again,
Well, we've got
this
the
is about,
different sizes.
this is about the lines on the map right now. So do you have some comments about, along the lines of Councillor Cookson, around the routes, both short, medium, and long term for your area?
I think
Did you want to touch
I'll
on that,
leave that
Catherine, in terms of
till later.
parliament?
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor
yeah.
Dunbar Smith.
Okay, so in terms of Hamilton, the orbiter, for example, it says here the service is not well optimized and efficient. So, but you're not proposing to change that at this moment. Long term is going to go, but if the service is not well optimized or efficient, why have we not changed it so it is more optimized?
So through the chair, I can provide comment on that. The removal of the orbiter relies on a supporting network that can adequately replace what the orbiter does. Currently, yes, there are inefficiencies in how the orbiter operates. It seems counterintuitive sometimes, but the circular services, because they just go round and round, the reliability and on time, punctuality, I guess, is not that great. To remove the orbiter now in the short term would require quite a step change in the rest of the network, which we wouldn't be able to do on a cost neutral basis, which is why that's kind of earmarked as the long term. So we can get the groundwork for the network, Hamilton network, as best as we can, and then have a significant uplift in service when the orbiter is replaced.
Fine,
Yes.
and it speaks here about on-demand services.
Yes.
Now, are they currently funded under the NZTA model?
So-
On-demand services?
No, so on-demand services are not currently funded because we do not have on-demand operating at the moment other than the night flex.
So there's a suggestion in here about a consultation about on-demand services, saying people are open to using these services. Are we proposing to shift to on-demand? Because that's what I hear. People see the big buses going around not full, and that on-demand might be a better option. Is that proposed in this model?
So there is on-demand proposed to support the network, not necessarily to replace it holistically, but as we shift from a coverage network to a more direct, high-frequent network, it does require the supplement of on-demand in certain areas. So the scope for on-demand within Hamilton is being worked through. Now that we have the bus network, the fixed route bus services agreed in a draft format, we can now engage with to do work on determining the cost of on-demand, where will be the areas that really need it if they've lost coverage in particular. So it will be a core component of the 2028 network, yes. But how that looks and what the cost of that is not yet determined.
And whether NZTA will pay for it, we'd have to go back to them cap in hand and ask them for more money for on-demand. Is that right?
If we wanted it to be part of our contracted bus services network, then yes. But I would note that they have recently approved the funding for the Timaru My Way on-demand system, which was the first time that they had funded an on-demand system. So that's starting to change, and our ability to access funding is getting, I think, easier in that space than it has been over the last few years.
But I don't see that, because what I hear from public is too many big buses going around empty. We want something that's smaller and more the type of thing Robbie was talking about. But would we need to drop off main services in order to pick up on demand?
So what is proposed through all the consultation and for years and years is that we move from a coverage, so your big buses going around every neighbourhood in Hamilton,
Yep,
to people walking, if they're able, a longer distance to reach a more fast, frequent and reliable bus service.
right.
And in its place, it's that first and last mile that I talked about people getting to that fast and frequent service. For those who are not able, perhaps there is a hierarchy of needs for that on-demand, for the more aged or disability users to use the on-demand to reach the more fast and frequent.
But just to clarify that is not in the current model, nor is the funding for that in the current model.
No, there's no current funding because the current government chose not to prioritise any PT funding. So the GPS affects the funding, which affects what we can do. So it's all dependent on the GPS, which sets the funding.
And my question was, if you drop off a large bus service, are you then able to apply it to an on-demand service if there is spare funding in that model?
Yes, but there wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee of subsidy on that at this point.
Although Timaru provides an option.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So perhaps we could switch to the next slide, which is as simple as it gets. But maybe in opening, could we get some comments from the team around the questions that you've heard around peak vehicle requirement, smaller buses, and maybe some commentary on the zero emission piece as well before we take further questions.
Just before you go on to the next one, the routes or routes, as I would say, whatever. I'm concerned about the increased frequency model, and therefore Hamilton has not provided for T2 and the likes or bus lanes. So you're going to increase the frequency of the routes, of the services on those routes. What work have you done with the likes of Hamilton City to ensure that buses can move freely and maintain their timetable? Because if you increase the frequency, you're adding to the congestion, and you're not getting rid of the congestion necessarily as a percentage. So I'd like to understand how those routes will cope with the additional buses, and what work you've done with Hamilton City in particular, ensure that those buses can move more quickly. And are they going to remove those stupid bus stops that stop the buses and therefore the traffic? So anyway, there's a bit there. Thank you.
So we work really closely with Hamilton City Council every day, and in the vein of probably what has been the majority of the conversation through the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee for the last 3 years, that alignment of long-term plan funding is the most discussed topic in that agenda. In addition, yes, it has, and the Hamilton City Councillors have now got a very clear idea about what our requirements are to ensure that we can run a reliable bus network for the city.
Get rid of, that's just a joke, really.
20-ton digger, you get rid of them pretty quick.
So
Sorry.
No, just to what thank you, Madam Chair. Just extra to what Councillor Smith was saying there. I've got real serious issues with the alignment of buses in Hamilton, and then not even talking to the education department, and there's buses of theirs that are travelling on the roads at 8:45, blocking and congesting traffic and blocking buses and everything else, when those buses could have parked up for 10 minutes and actually would have saved on congestion of actually what's going on in Hamilton. And you've actually got buses at the same time that are out of service that are travelling around the city in congestion times as well. And just the management of all that has got a real issue in the future. If you're talking about population growth and everyone out, that must be something that you've got, your Department of Public Transport needs to have a bit more oversight of what you're actually causing in congestion times around the city. So 100% what Noel was speaking about then. You may not notice it, but every time I travel into the city every morning trying to get to a 9 o'clock meeting, that is the issue that I meet.
So if I understand the question, it's how are we engaging with Ministry of Ed and their buses? Is that your question?
But it's actually the congestion of all buses it's our buses that are not in service. It's it's school buses as well that are all on the road at the same time. Yet those buses that are coming from the eastern side of the city trying to come west, and they've got no pupils on, yet they're blocking traffic, as well as our empty buses that are not in circulation at that time of travelling somewhere empty. Yet wouldn't those buses either travel before peak traffic time or after peak traffic time to get somewhere, and not during peak traffic if they're not doing anything?
If I could just try and grab this and what being asked, are you asking for in the contract negotiations going forward with whoever gets it, that they don't run out of service buses in peak periods? Obviously the Ministry of Education is something that's outside of our discussion right now. I'm just trying to, I understand the sentiment, and obviously there's a chicken and egg. If you've got more people wanting to go on a bus because it's more frequent or it suits their need.
These are buses not in service.
There'll be, I'm just saying, but there'll be less buses, there'll be less congestion of other vehicles. That's the whole point of PT. But are you asking staff to say, consider in the contract negotiate tender processes about the movement of outer service buses during peak times?
Yep, and that same discussion should happen with the Education Department.
So staff can take that.
Separate to the contracts about relieving the congestion of bus services too frequent.
So
Just through the chair, just in response to that, so Waikato Regional Council and Hamilton City Council have been working really closely on planning and the provision of infrastructure in transport corridors across the city. So that's an active piece of work that we've got at the moment. So we're in this triennium, in the current 3-year period, we're into a very heavy period in doing that work. So it is about making sure that we've got the infrastructure that's in place that does support public transport, but also supports other modes of transport and supports the operation of the city in a general sense. So that work is going on. One thing that we were challenged at the most recent public transport subcommittee was to actually show more of the benefits of that work, and that's something we've taken on board and we're working actively on at the moment. So we are working closely with Hamilton City. There is a considered program of work in that space, but there's more to do, obviously. Yeah.
Councillor Strange.
Oh yeah, just incredibly quickly, just to add to Councillor Smith's points. Probably, a lot of our discussion is about aligning those infrastructure and services, and some of the low-hanging fruit, rather than moving straight to T2 lanes, which are costly and annoy people, is just stepping people towards more bus-friendly, going first at lights, so having transponders. And there are several intersections around the city where that already takes place. The very minimal bus lanes that we do have, actually making sure that they work as well.
Councillor Nicol.
Thanks. It strikes me that the conversation's gone on tangents, which aren't specifically on here, and it just highlights for me again while we've talked about previously about structure of RTC and the PT sub. We really need to get it right that the TA connections and that voice on network does get set up at the same time next triennium, that it isn't just coming through constituent councillors and generic surveys, but very targeted relationship where we keep the mayors and the council TAs close with us. But my question just jumps to the very last part of that motion. I asked in the break, but I'll say it now. That delegating authority of the CE to approve roadmap, why is that? Why would we do that and not approve ourselves? Yeah, no, I already know the answer. I just want.
Madam Chair, it's because it's not finished yet. Yeah. We're waiting for you to make a day about the direct wish to take in relation to the transition to ZP. Because of the election, you won't be available to approve it. Finished. Right. It's been written.
So the guidance you're getting today from the decisions is getting into that.
Yes.
And there'll be nothing else new.
No,
that.
no. It will reflect the direction you point us in today. And of course, it's not a statutory document, so it can be updated at any time if your direction changes in the future.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, I wanted to move on to zero emission buses. Are we at that stage yet?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think that councillors have been well enough brought up to date with this transition and the proposals we met today. We've had the workshop on the 17th of June. Now, today, we're suggesting that if council was to do the electrification itself, depot land would be 24 million, staff and vehicle facilities 50, a total of 74 million in full year 28, which is a 77% increase over LTP. In the workshop, it actually says zero emission buses, the total capex is 282 million between 2025 and 2038. So we've got a significant difference in the costings that have been presented to us to date, and I'd like some clarification of that.
Julie or James?
Through the very high cost, the total capex is over 30 years. My understanding, they were the initial modelled amounts. So the ones that are in this report relate specifically to the cost of depot land as the buses and everything else as well.
Sorry, what it says here is total capex 2025 to 38 is 282 million. Total capex over 30 years is 330 million. That was the first time in June that I heard that there was a huge amount of costing coming down the line. And suddenly we're saying here today, this must be made a decision today where we're advocating the electrification of the bus fleet. And we're suggesting that, okay, council may not choose to spend the $74 million. Let's go to the private operators. They're going to have to pay the same sort of money to electrify and staff and facilitate. So someone is going to be paying this. And I don't think there's enough implications here showing the costs of rates. In the past, Hamilton City Council has looked after many of these functions. Now, with this process, because of electrification, the depot and the land falls to us in our rating process. So these will fall on our rating costs. Our rates will go up to pay for these contracts.
That's only if we decide on the medium and the long term at that time. Is that correct? Well, if it gets entered into.
So,
I mean,
there's a reference in the report that those costs equal an interest payment that has been calculated through the financial model as an annual cost on council, I think, of 4 million a year. The next paragraph of the report indicates what our assessment of the cost would be if the operator were to provide those things, and says that it's, I think, up to 500,000 a year. So that,
Or
that,
can you point us to where in the report?
It's item 64. Now, I don't understand what you've said there, so perhaps you can explain each of those in detail, because we're being asked to make decisions today that have got fundamental implications for rates.
again,
Without adequate information.
public transport is a third funded, or a portion funded by rates, a portion funded by NZTA, and a portion funded by fares. But not all of that is rates. In the operational service model, if council were to buy the land, then that would all be on the organisation, yes.
But presumably the private operator would have to buy the land for the electrification and put in the electrification process as well. Someone has to provide the facilities for electrification of buses and then purchase the electric buses themselves.
And they effectively do that today.
Well, they do it with
For
diesel, don't they?
Yes, they do. But the vehicle is theirs. They own the land, and they invest in the land for the depot and facilities that they have to operate the network.
That's right. But a step change to electrification will cause our rates to go up, or to pay for the costs of whoever's paying for the bus contract.
That takes you to our recommendation, which is that at this point in a very limited funding environment, we do not think that it is we don't recommend to council that it requires that on day one, and that it allows the operator to tender on the basis of what they can achieve within the funding envelopes on day one, but then look to expand to achieve the national mandates over the term of the contract. Now, if there is more money available and the decision is made by council that it wants to make that investment, then that's a conversation after day one.
And yet we've still got the difference between the 74 million listed here and the 282 million listed in our workshop. And also when in the workshop, in the presentation, I've just looked back to it, it said in the LTP moving forward, there were no budget funds set aside for this electrification process.
Going through the chair, my understanding is those large figures that we had at the workshop included everything. So that's vehicles, infrastructure, charging, the whole box and dice.
Yep.
Whereas the 74 that we're talking about is just depots and charging infrastructure.
So presumably if I'm
they're different things.
If I'm a bus operator, I'm probably having to spend the 282 million if I'm buying the buses and I'm being asked to do the land and the electrification.
If you were a bus operator, you would be procuring buses to actually service the contract anyway.
Yep.
So whether they are diesel or electric, like that's a conversation to be had, and there is a price differential, I think, in that as well. But it's not perhaps as dire as I think you're pointing out.
Right.
I don't believe.
Okay, even $74 million spent, if it's coming in 2028, for example, is a significant rating impact, even if it's spent of a loan. I mean, are we looking 2%, 4% on the rates as a result of this?
But we're not recommending that, Councillor. That's not the recommendation in the report. We've
So
provided
you're recommending that you go to the private operator and ask them to provide all these facilities. So someone has to pay the $74 million, whether it's a private operator or whether it's the council.
If I can help, I mean, I think Councillor Dunbar-Smith is asking, what is the impact of the private operators contract for doing these type of services on likely bus fares or NZTA contributions and the ratepayer impact? And of course, we've got to go out to the tender process to know what that would be. I just want to check, Councillor Dunbar-Smith, is this coming from a view that you might not want to have electrification built into the contracts, which is a government mandate, and there's no indication that's going to change, is because otherwise we've got to do it.
Well, the other question is that following the workshop, the chair wrote to the minister saying we were not keen on electrification and wanted to know were we able to continue with diesel buses? I mean, why can't we?
And I have checked, and we did receive a letter back
Yep.
from the minister, and He says, I do not currently intend to review the mandate. And that he is a big proponent of electric vehicles and look forward to seeing our fleet increasingly electrify.
Well, at the same time as they're proposing to cap rates, and what I need to know is what is the impact on the rates for undergoing this process? And we don't seem to have any information. We've got very little information at all, other than a map on attachment 4, which shows a vastly increasing asset ownership cost if we do it ourselves, but presumably the same trajectory upwards will be occurred if we go into the private sector, asking them to provide all the facilities. I don't think we've got enough information to it.
So,
Don't have a microphone.
Picking order.
Yeah,
No, there's 200 million in the documents and staff don't seem to be addressing that somebody's going to pay and ultimately the ratepayer will be paying more. That's what I think we're wanting to hear. How's that being addressed? Thank you.
Can I just add, like, if you look at the bus operators within New Zealand, you basically have two main players. They're not starting from a base of 0. They already run electric buses around the country. They already know what they are doing, hence the staff recommendation. It has never been my intent that we would ever own the land and spend that amount of ratepayer money either. There are different models to be looked at, and staff have recommended one of them, which is market-led. Once we go out to tender, we will know more. However, as our CE has said, and the chair has confirmed through a letter from the minister, we have to do this. Whether it comes through the contract at a reduced rate, so be it. But we're not going to avoid this.
And if I can just add to that, I just need to confirm, it is not possible to give the exact costs of what it's going to be until you've gone to the market to tender, because whilst capital costs might go up, that might have a concomitant decrease in operating costs because of the nature of how they operate it. They've all got to come together, and that's why I think that we've said it's a future council that's going to determine what those rating impacts are going to be. To be able to go into a contract process, we need council to confirm and give guidance on the type of routes, type of approach we're going to take, such as we don't purchase land and whatever and put in our own facilities, such as we will not try and have a day one zero emission bus fleet, but it will transition over time. And we need to let the market come back and tell us what the options are and what the cost would be on it. Have I got that right, staff?
yes, you have.
So the question was just, is it the council or the tenders board which would decide? This would be something I think under current delegation, Finance and Services Committee would be deciding, but I think something of this magnitude, Janine, would probably need to go to a full council.
Or did I lose? Oh, no. So I've got Councillor Nicol, Councillor Clarkson, Councillor Strange, and then Councillor Hughes.
Thanks. Yeah, so when I first read the paper on Friday, I got a bit worked up and I called Councillor Strange. But because the recommendation, obviously is advocating for an option for a variety of reasons. But I would like to have the lowest total cost in the long run, because we're a long run organisation. Even if it is just 1% of the overall contract. I mean, that's the same argument as just a cup of coffee, but 500K a year is a hell of a lot of money. So I hope we will end up in a place where we're not paying for a profit-making company to deliver, the outcome that we need to get to. But what I'm trying to get at here is that I had concerns that we were locking things in. But then it's things like what's being said in paragraph 69 and 70, where it's saying you will be coming back to the council This is just direction to allow you to do that RFP. And so that is what gave me the comfort to want to second the motion, for example. I wish we had started a lot of this earlier. I wish it wasn't all coming in at election time right now as well. But I can see that you've done what you can in the time that we have, done this in, and that as long as we are open to in the tender process to invite very innovative ways in, whether they, because it said somewhere here about requiring them to provide the land and the infrastructure. In my mind, that then limits you to tenders from big players. But if we are very open with our language, as you mentioned to me in the break, we will be in the tender process, that people can propose various innovative things, then because we're not locked in on knowing what we're going to do, they also aren't locked in, and they can propose a variety of solutions very comfortable that allow, bring you to that place of having the tender process with our direction. Will give that next council the information it needs to make the actual decisions which involve actual dollars. Yeah, so really happy to.
Chair, can I have?
I've got Councillor Clarkson, Councillor Strange, and Councillor Hughes, Councillor Marr, Councillor Dunbar Smith. Clarkson.
I won't need to say much. Jennifer just said pretty well every point that I had written down on the piece of paper. I think what we're talking about here is protecting an opportunity. There are going to be many opportunities to focus in on the efficiency, the cost, the impact on the rates and all of those things. But that's not going to happen today. That's coming later. These guys have outlined a very logical, sequential process around protecting our opportunity. That's all they're doing. And for that reason, I'll be supporting them.
Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make a suggestion, and I'll probably get shot down in flames. We had a gentleman here earlier on today who did a presentation to council, who owned and ran the public transport company which serviced Hamilton and Tauranga for a number of years. I've just spoken to him on the telephone. I would like to suggest that he and whoever else he wants to bring into the room should be passed all this information across and ask for them to critique it on our behalf. Nobody in this room is run a transport company. Nobody knows. They've talked to various people, but they have never run the business. And it takes a certain skill to operate a set of assets, significant value. And I would really appreciate having that knowledge and experience, those eyes going over what is being proposed in this plan and what also has been presented to us in workshops. So that's my contribution.
Isn't it the same as the S17A review, like the other process that's happening alongside? I'm just keen to get that answer.
Through the chair, one thing that we were is in the report, I'll just mention as well, we have conducted Local Government Act Section 17A review. That final report is due with us, I think, next week, and that is an independent review focused specifically on bus service provision. That report, and that is with experts in the public transport space, part of that review as well. So that review has come back, well, what I've seen so far anyway, it's supporting the direction of travel that we're articulating here. It's also been, I think, a vote of confidence in the way that Waikato Regional Council has run and procured bus services as well. So those things are certainly encouraging. My expectation is that the report will come back with some suggestions for improvements and how we might do things even better. But to me, picking up on Councillor Hughes' suggestion, I would suggest humbly that report is actually what it is. It's an independent review of how we've gone about our bus service provision, and that will be available to council when we get that. I think it's due next week.
Is that just,
will that be open to the public to see, so that the public can also scrutinise it?
The point I'm trying to make, I want to see somebody with the experience, the knowledge, and the history of operating a very successful business in the city having their eyes over what we're proposing to do for the future. I think we owe nothing less than that to our ratepayers.
And you're not satisfied that the
I'm not
17A
happy
review?
with anything that local government New Zealand has anything to do with.
Is
You know that.
the 17A is not local government New Zealand, Councillor
Chairman,
Hughes?
I'm asking a very simple question. Either you want to support me
No,
or you
no.
don't.
No, I'm just trying to get clarity because what I'm hearing you ask for is independent review. And what I'm hearing staff say is that that's what the 17A review is. So I'm just coming back to you and saying, do
Can I
you,
see
do you
can I
believe
see-
that that's an independent review, that what you're asking for,
I
or?
want to see
or
the
no?
qualifications and the experience of the people who've done that review before I answer that question. Please.
I just had a quick question. Is it public, that the review report at some point, so others can look at it?
We haven't received the final report
Yeah,
yet,
I
but
just
it will
wondered.
come to council. I'm
Imagine
assuming that
anyone
it will
could
be
look layman.
public. Yeah, unless there's anything that's in there that's commercially sensitive, and I don't think there will be. So, but there is suitably qualified public transport people involved in that review.
Is it commercially sensitive who we engaged to do that?
No, we
So
went through an
who
open
did
tender
we
process.
engage to do that?
The principal consultant is a consultant called Height Project Management. They are based out of Auckland. They have engaged other public transport experts to work with them on that review. There has been a comprehensive review of our documentation and our processes, and they've spoken to a lot of people about public transport in the Waikato.
Sorry.
Sorry, were you finished, Councillor Hughes?
Left it on the table, Madam Chair.
Can I get you to turn off your
In
mic?
light of what's been revealed, I'd like to delay this decision until actually seeing that independent review too, because we are being asked to make a decision to go one way or the other, be it PTO or PTA. What I will ask though is, obviously NZTA have a contestable fund, $136 million. If we go with the PTO option, does that rule us out of applying for that, any of that contestable? There's 136 million, of which 3 regional councils that are PTAs have received already. There's more funding to come. So 40 million of it has been allocated. It's part of NZTA. I just read it. So I'm wrong.
Look, I'm
Or
not.
it's not a. You're telling me there's not
Sorry,
an NZTA.
I'm seeing shaking heads, so
contestable-
can we clarify?
contestable fund to help PTAs decarbonise their fleet.
Through you, Madam Chair, there is no funding. In the last budget in May 2025, the government in their appropriations documents had allocated any money that was there, and there is no further available for that particular fund.
So that 136 has been closed down. Is what you're telling me?
Yes.
That was, I think that was part
Yes,
of
we
the.
talked about that in the workshop.
Yeah, we did talk about that in the letter, or in the workshop, and that was
In the
part of the
letter.
letter.
Yes,
Because we said that, yes, you left the mandate in place, but you
Yes.
took away all the funding to support delivery of that mandate.
yes. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so obviously we're not entitled to any of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just my original comment then still stands. I'd like to see this, to see that 17A come back to us, to help us make a more due diligent decision. Thank you.
Just so I can clarify in my head, the 17A, is that looking at this in its totality? Like where the routes are, the long, short, medium, long term, the transition, the land ownership, depot ownership versus operator ownership? Is it looking at everything?
Yes, it is. So it does go into a little bit of detail, and it lines up with the stuff that we've got from the zero emissions bus technical implementation plan in terms of asset ownership, and also it goes into some detail around sort of contract models as well. But I can say that everything that is coming back from that review is entirely consistent with what's in this report today.
Do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, through your chair. So I'm just wanting to add that we have recently conducted a market sounding exercise. So we actually approach 4 major operators in North Island, and we did socialize some of the contents that you've seen today in the report around the ownership model for the ZEB and the zero bus requirement. And what we articulate in the report generally accord with the feedback from the operator as well. So I think there's a high level sort of comfort that, you know, PTO would keen to kind of lead some of the infrastructure side of things for zero the EB asset. And as part of the tender process, we are also looking to engage with the operators around the network designs and some of the draft contract RFP. So we're intending to run a market engagement process leading to before we issue the RFP on the market. Again, we'll provide opportunity to work with operators to finalize our RFP.
I know you haven't spoken or put your light on, Councillor Downard, but as the chair of Regional Transport Committee, I would really like you to weigh in on this conversation.
Madam Chair, yeah, I found it quite difficult reading this report, even though I've been to all the workshops and stuff like that, just because of the unknowns. And there's always unknowns, but just listening to the discussion for the different councillors today, and I think Brian and Phil, you've done a fantastic job on that report, you know, being frank and open on all the possibilities that could come about through the tenders, and that's what I kind of read into the report. This is mainly trying to future-proof ourselves in that tender space, and I kind of think back to the workshop where we looked at Manawatu, who the tenders came in were all electrified, and you know that took out a lot of the cost and on that council down there. I do appreciate some of the councillors with the unknowns and stuff like that, but I think we do have the opportunity later on to make those decisions or change those decisions once those more clarity comes in with the different tenders that will come in. I think there's 10 contracts that are going out for tender. Is it? Oh, 7. So, you know, it was a big scare in one of those workshops when we were talking about those numbers of 200 to 300 million and stuff like that, but that could all completely evaporate by going on the onus on the people that are putting the tenders in to take that cost underneath their wing. I don't think we're unique, and the rest of the country has been doing it and going ahead with doing some of these. So, you know, I'm definitely, you know that the staff have looked into that as well. As far as that report, you talked about, Brian, it comes out next week or, you know, even 2 weeks. I think the important thing is that decision's made before the election. So you can get on and carry on with that projection of where we need to go, because it's virtually, that's why we extended the contract. So it gives 2 years to really get into the nuts. And even the networks, you know, those networks, the way I read in the report, was kind of future-proofing with us in the tenders and saving us costs on, you know, if those networks then do come in fruition, that the tenders have already, you know, accounted for that in their tenders. So I'm kind of happy that to follow the motion in the second, but I'm also happy that if we want to wait for 2 weeks for that report to come in, for the other councillors, that's where I sit. To add on to it, this, you know, for me, there's so many factors, you know, like we've gone into regional rating with, you know, the emissions that we have to do by law, you know, the infrastructure and all that. And hopefully when these tenders come back, that'll answer a lot of the questions that the councillors have.
If I just could make a comment on the back of that, I think that's a really good summary of the picture. And I just want to say from my position, and I'm sure this will be a staff position, it is absolutely essential that we do get a decision in this triennium. Otherwise, it could be very difficult further down. And as Phil said from the outset, there's been a lot of lead road into today, and I would be encouraging councillors to want to make a decision in this triennium. for the good of our communities.
Just for the record, I
Sorry,
support
got-
making a decision today. I'm in support.
Okay. Everyone on the speaking list has spoken, so I'm just wanting to move this forward somehow.
I'd
So,
like to follow up. Warren, I think, made a amendment that basically we should go to a workshop and bring this back to September, and that the section 17A report should be presented at the workshop closed session if necessary. So we have more information, and as part of that, I would like to see more detailed financials and implications for rating. I'd second that motion.
I am keen to understand, Councillor Hodge, where you're landing on this.
Believe it or not, all of the areas spoken about, except for the east, is outside my constituency. But in saying that, travelling around Hamilton and outer, public transport's important. It's an important commodity that we've been paying rates for since my parents were here. You know, we've always paid rates towards it. The question is, are we doing a good job for the money we pay? That's what the question is. Am I for this? Well, you know, public transport, some people do use it. It's very important. Is your routes right? I don't know. I don't live in the area. I just have to take it for granted that you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 you use, have done a damn good job to bring the paperwork to the table. So in that perspective, I'm happy to go with it. If you come rurally, then that's a different story.
All right. I do see a light down there. Were you wanting to?
Amendment to the motion.
Yeah, I haven't heard from Councillor Mahuta, who is online.
Kia ora, Pamela. I'm in just too public a place, but I put my comments in the chat. I've just come away from there to say if we, Waikato happy to share our expertise. We were the last contractor holder under Go Bus. If to Councillor Hughes looking for community experts, we owned Go Bus in the most recent round of contracts. So just putting our hand up to help. Kia ora.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
The issue is we're not at the end. And this is not the beginning, but it's a journey. So the commitment, I think, that is not being made is the final makeup of what may result from this tender process. On that basis, I'm prepared to support it and won't support the amendment because of the need to move forward. And while I accept that we haven't got the 17A, and I am most critical of council bringing recommendations to us without all the facts, we are not being asked to make a decision on a contract or even close to a contract. We are being asked to make a decision to facilitate the development and tendering of those contracts. And on that basis, I think we need to take a step back. I am concerned. I had a discussion with Janine before this item came up. And whilst we may not have agreed on the exact figures, my own workings suggests somewhere between a 4 and a 7% rates impact per annum if council takes on these costs that it will need to, be it through a contract and those costs are shown in the contract, or whether we pay for it directly through the ownership of land, etc., which we are not recommending. So until all that's crystallised, to come back to what I said at the start, we're on a journey, and this is only a step on that journey. So whilst I'm not sure whether you've taken that motion or the second.
We're going to handle that.
Yeah, I won't be supporting it at this moment. Thank you.
So I, instead of, if I hear you correctly,
Not that I'm
Democracy
supporting
Dave,
a rates increase
that
either.
it's, that it's a procedural motion, a procedural motion?
I think what we have here, I'll seek some clarity from the mover and seconder here, is that you are proposing to leave this item to lie on the table pending was it a workshop and receipt of that report, and then bring it back to the next meeting of council?
That's correct.
I would be more inclined, it's not actually an amendment to the motion, but it's rather a procedural motion to allow it to.
Thank you, Dave.
For the September meeting with some more information and clarification
Who was the second?
of the 4 to 7%.
I'll just quickly craft some wording here.
What's the impact?
I think that there is support in the room today to move this forward, but
I ask, Madam Chair, that the instructions issued to the persons or person or company doing the Section 17 included with the report, the scope of the report, not included in the report. But the full picture.
Need to hear from Phil about if we delay till September, what the impact is.
Well, a decision this triennium is going to allow us to continue to move forward. There is a heap of work that we need to trigger as a result of the point where the decision is made. So a delay of a month will impact our ability to get into the detailed timetabling work, for example, and commence some of that early market work, because we don't have a clear direction upon which to seek a review. That all has a consequence on what we require from NZTA by the end of the year. So effectively, we're giving ourselves a month less to obtain NZTA approval, and we can't tender before we have that.
Whereas we could move it forward today on the basis that it comes back with any material information that comes out of the 17A or otherwise brought to our attention, and therefore giving updated direction to the staff. It's a compromise.
can we do that?
Well, we'd need to come back in a workshop, wouldn't it? The 17A.
Well, if there was a material outcome, is what you're saying, Councillor Smith, if there was a material outcome identified in the 17A, then it would trigger a workshop.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's something, a workshop can be had as well. And if there's something material that arises from the 17A or otherwise, then that would invoke an urgent paper back to the next council meeting for council to update its direction to staff. I'm not sure whether that would hinder or inhibit, but the reality is that would hopefully meet everyone's needs.
And what we're hearing from Brian is what you're seeing coming through in the 17A. You're not seeing anything at this point that would be fundamental.
Through the Chair, yes, so I have been privy to the draft versions of that report. You'd expect that we're right at the final, towards the end of that being produced. And like I said earlier, it does line up very nicely with the direction of travel that were articulated in this report to council today. There will be things in there for us to work on and improve and make things better, but the direction of travel is very consistent with what we're talking about here. There's no big showstoppers there at all.
And those improvements in direction of travel, the intent, even if we approve this today, would be that those would be incorporated, yes?
They would be things that we would continue to improve and develop as we go through. And yes, they absolutely could be, and they should be.
What's the impact if we don't do it this triennium? At the end of the day, it's either going to go, no matter what you bring back to the next meeting, it's going to be a yes or no. So we've got a plan A, yes is all go. What's the plan B if it doesn't? That's what it's going to end up being. And then that's the impact. If it's a no at the next meeting, what's the impact to Waikato Regional Council, to the public transport renewal contract? What's the problem then if there's no impact, if we don't get it over today, tomorrow, next week or whatever? That's the most important thing is today. Phil has just said he'd like an answer today. We are asking them to go away and come back for next month. If the answer is still no from WRC, what is the impact for the incoming council next year? Obviously, with yous who don't make it back, and if all of yous you do, then you still have the same problem in 2026. You have to look at the long-term plan for public transport. You either do it this year or wait till you come back and still have the same fight while these guys are trying to sort out the buses for us.
All right, all right. But your constituents probably do.
So I don't,
Yes.
I
So
don't
we
think
have
we didn't have clarity from Phil about if we delay and get some more information to the September meeting rather than this meeting.
Paragraph 2 of your report.
Paragraph 2.
Okay,
It's in within the current triennium. So either or. Okay, well, I would like more information. I think this process has been
So,
not provided enough information.
so we have a
Point of order.
procedural motion. We have a procedural motion to leave it lie on the table. Pending, yeah.
I'm going to ask one question of Phil for this, just to make sure we've got everything in place here. Proposing a workshop on the 10th and the 11th of September, will that report be available for publication in that agenda, probably a few working days prior, be available?
Are there any guarantees? Can you guarantee that? Well, because if you can't guarantee that, I mean, what you're saying is this decision has to be made this triennium. If you cannot guarantee that, then
Look, I think the short answer is I don't know exactly when that report will be finalised, but just reiterating what I said earlier, that it is reinforcing and the direction of travel that we've articulated in the report today. So there's no showstoppers around this at all.
But sorry.
Right.
So the 10th of September means we need to have the report with you all by the 3rd of September, which is Tuesday next week.
yeah, Councillor Smith, I really appreciate that you tried to to wrap up what some of the concerns that were trying to be addressed in the procedural motion, but I'm not getting any indication that there's an appetite to include those.
Had to move and second it, must be put that other business.
Are you saying I have to take the procedural motion?
We do have to take
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So just to
I was
close
just
it-
trying to get the procedural motion.
Just in closing statements to my procedural motion, I do think, councillors need to look at this seriously and gain confidence from a peer-reviewed report. Indicated if it's as Brian's indicated, that we carry on in this direction, then well and good. But I think it's our responsibility to see an external peer-reviewed report. Well, there's a hell of a lot hangs on this.
And so my comment is that even if it's a draft peer-reviewed report, I'd like to see somebody else has reviewed this process because it's going to have major implications for future rate rises.
Can we put the motion, please, Madam Chair?
So we're going to put the procedural motion. All those in favor?
Vision, please.
This is the, just so we're all clear what we're voting on. The procedural motion that the item be left on the table pending a workshop on the 10th or 11th of September to be confirmed, and that it is tabled at the next meeting of council in September.
That's correct. I'll call your name as usual. Please pop on your mic and clearly indicate if you support, oppose or abstain from the procedural
So to be
motion.
clear, if you support, you're leaving it on the table. If you're against, we're moving forward.
That's correct.
I'm talking about the clarity of the motion. So it's the next council meeting in At the 23rd? Don't have the council meeting, the work.
If we don't, but we can't have the workshop till we have the review.
Paper, it doesn't have to be the final.
Put,
Yep. Okay, I'll call your names. Please indicate whether you support or oppose or abstain from the procedural motion. If you support the procedural motion, the item will be left to lie on the table. If you oppose the procedural motion and the motion is lost, then we will put the motion that is above it on the screen. Okay. In no particular order, Councillor Hodge. Councillor Hughes.
What?
Councillor Kneebone.
Against.
Councillor Ma. Support. Councillor Mahuta. Come back. Councillor Nicol. Councillor Smith. Microphone, please.
you're supporting that it lie on the table.
Councillor Story.
Against.
Councillor Strange.
I responsibly and respectfully oppose.
Councillor Clarkson.
Oppose.
Councillor Cookson.
Support.
Councillor Downard.
Support.
Councillor Dunbar Smith.
I responsibly support.
Councillor Mahuta. There's no vote recorded for Councillor Mahuta. 3, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Councillor Mahuta, yes.
I don't support leaving it on the table.
Okay, so you oppose the motion?
I oppose the motion. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. The motion is lost. 7 votes to 6.
Move the original motion be put, please, quickly.
Yep. So just so we're clear, you're supporting this, moving forward with what's proposed. Yes.
May I get clarity just on 2 points? The 2 that delegate to the chief executive and just the difference between the zero emissions road map and then the transport activity procurement strategy. There's a difference, I take it, because 2 different
Yes.
points up there.
There was papers.
A quick outline of what the difference is, that's all.
Through you, Madam Chair, the ZEB roadmap is the non-statutory document that indicates to the wider world the approach that this council is going to take to transition to ZEB. So, and I explained before that the reason that we need to delegate it to the chief executive was without decision on that approach until now, that document hasn't been completed. After today, if there is a decision made on the approach, we can move forward and write that up as a thing that goes on our website, approval from the chief executive to show this is the approach that this council is going to take to the transition.
Difference to the procurement strategy?
So for the procurement strategy, I think in essence, it's just a strategy that we need to outline in terms of what we sourcing from the market. So this will be informed by the network reviews or the outcomes of the decision from today around the network changes. And then we need to include the procurement procedure, so in terms of the timelines and how we intend to procure. So it's more kind of a technical sort of document. That will,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I've got to go, but I support
put
the motion.
you support the motion. Wait a minute. I don't know. Can I take that vote if we haven't actually
Just put the motion.
put the motion? All those in favor?
Provision called for.
It's not, in the case of there is clearly a split, it's not evidentially clear how that motion has gone, so I would suggest that we run through the division.
What?
Noting that councillor Downard does need to depart, I will start with you. Can you indicate whether you support?
Support, because this has to be done before the election.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith?
Oppose.
Councillor Hodge? Councillor Hughes?
Support it.
Councillor Kneebone?
Support.
Councillor Marr?
Oppose.
Councillor Mahuta?
Support.
Councillor Nicol? Councillor Smith? Councillor Story?
Support.
Councillor Strange?
Support.
Councillor Clarkson? Support. Councillor Cookson?
Oppose.
The motion is carried 10 votes to 3.
Well done. And can I just acknowledge and thank the team for all of the work that I know you have put in to get us to this point. You have taken countless groups of people through conversation, through consultation, through opportunity to understand and provide input. You have taken counselors through workshops, committees through workshops, and I just want to acknowledge that you've done the hard yards. Well done.
Madam,
We all look forward to the next stage in this, and we look forward to the distribution of that 17A review so that counselors can have the confidence that that independent review has occurred, and any sort of recommendations that come out of it are incorporated into our way forward.
so Madam Chair, you're asking for that to come to us, that 17A?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Let's see. Okay, I just am gonna just test this with counselors. It is. Yes, we do only have 2 items. We do only have 2 more items. Can we power through? All right. So we'll move on to 7.4. This is on page 215. Appointment of regional on-scene commanders Celeste Davies-Calway and George McQuillan.
So moved, Madam Chair. I think it's a great report. Not a lot of need unless Greg needs to clarify anything.
Got a mover in Councillor Smith and a second in Councillor Hodge. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
For 7.5, Madam Chairman, greatest respectfully.
7.5, this is the correction to the legislative reference in a previously passed motion. So this is sort of a tidy up. All right, I've got a mover, got a mover in Councillor Smith and a second in Councillor Marr. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
All right, and we dealt with the public excluded because it was only minutes. All right. Okay, so with that. No, we don't. We dealt with the public excluded during the minutes process. The motions that were.
Just to provide some clarity here, when we published the council agenda, the public excluded minutes were also published into open. So the public excluded agenda you're holding, bar the redaction of 1 sentence in the Environmental Performance Committee minutes, were all released into open. At the start of the meeting where we have confirmed and received those minutes, we have confirmed and received both the open and the public excluded minutes.
But the minutes were already passed, yes?
So,
They were.
so if there's a redacted comment, then how do we confirm them as being correct without actually going into public excluded and confirming that that was correct?
But we have in the past received public excluded minutes in the public session. We only,
But if there's a redaction, Madam Chair, that means that they have not been published and therefore not received.
All members received both the redacted and unredacted versions of the public excluded minutes. Only the redacted versions were published into the open session.
so when the minutes were put before this council, it included, the motion included acceptance of the public excluded portion of it.
Just
So-
for sake of clarity,
don't
I
agree
can
with
scroll back to the top and quickly just skim through the 3 resolutions. So if I go back to the start here, so the first set that we received an
No,
open
the only question
Yep.
Councillor Dunbar Smith has is on the EPC
EPC.
minutes.
So I'll run. So we was moved by Councillor Clarkson, seconded by Councillor Cookson. We confirmed that both the open and public excluded minutes of the Environmental Performance Committee were confirmed as a correct record.
Thank you. We've had that process in the past. Thank you very much. All right, we will move to conclude our meeting. Yeah. We'll do that after we close the meeting.
I can speak to that at the conclusion of the meeting.
Conclusion
Yeah.
of the
Just,
meeting.
just a
We're going to
clarification though,
close-
yeah, no, but these minutes here, I'm just being pedantic, they actually are different than the ones that are in the open session because it's got files down here going delegated, recommended, recorded. It's a better system, but it is actually different than what has been in the open session minutes.
And this motion has already passed, councillors. This motion has already passed. So we are
I
now
agree with
going
you,
to
Noel.
have Karakia to close the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. Unahia mai te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te hinanaro. E te ara takatū, koe rā e rongo, e whakaaria, aki ke ronga, kia tina, haumie, huie, tai kie.
Thank you very much, councillors. We'll declare the meeting closed at 12:43 p.m.
Can I just check? So we've got a catch up with me. I'd suggest